Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Table and Able. Today we're doing the last simon in Orach Chaim in the hundreds, 199 Orach Chaim. I'm excited for the milestone tomorrow. 200 simonim in Shulchan Aruch. It's not 200 if no halacha. That's 200 simonim. It's pretty big. All right, 199. Almi mezamnin, almi ein mezamnin. Yud Aleph Sifim 11 halachas. It's actually pretty short 11 halachas. Aleph Hasham Meshachal Gezayis mezamnin alav. This simon deals with who is chayiv in a zimun, who is not chayiv in a zimun. Who can you join? Who can't you join to your zimun? The waiter, as long as you eat a kazayis of bread, according to some opinions, some say even he eats a kazayis of vegetables, he can join. Even if he's not sitting with you, because that's his kaviyas. His kaviyas is to be getting up and getting stuff for you. So he can join. If you have two people, he can join and be a third person. Kusi Kusi is someone the Gemara talks about, is a machlokas, whether a kusi is a complete ger, geri emes, or geri arios, or they converted under false pretenses. It's not clear who a kusi really is. The Gemara says they're oved har grizim har evil. They worship the god on har grizim and har evil. I'm just joking around, but kuthim sounds like the word kuth, uncouth. People are uncouth. Who's uncouth? Which Jews are uncouth? I'll leave that for you to answer the question. But suffice to say, I did have an interesting story I read in Living Marriage where he talked about a certain uncouth person from Yerushalayim who got married to a British girl and what happened with their marriage because they were not accustomed, she was not accustomed to him being so uncouth, putting his feet on the table, eating with his hands. He's not considered a Jewish person. Well, Kusi, I don't know technically who a Kusi qualifies as today, but if you find a Kusi, he's not part. We paskin. It's a machlokus rishon how you paskin, because if you paskin Ger Emes, he's a full ger. We're going to see in a couple of halachas a ger, a regular convert. He could be included in the zimun. He's chayiv in zimun. So it's always talking about someone who is not a complete ger. We paskin. He's not a complete ger. He's geri arios. Gimel, I'm Aretz Gomer Mizamin Love is Manazeh. He's a Jew, but he's unlearned. Even if he's Gomer, like I'm an Amaretz, but I'm not an Amaretz Gomer because I'm also Talmud Chacham. So I know about the world. If he's not Amaretz Gomer, he completely knows everything about the world, but he has no clue about Torah. He's not even listening to Eli Stefansky's Daf Yomi Shir. Imagine that. He's not listening to Eli Stefansky's Daf Yomi Shir. He's not part of Klal Yisrael. You could include him nowadays, even though maybe the Gemara indicates maybe there should be reason not to include him, unless he's someone who's proficient in Mishnayos at least. But we say even if he's not following my Mishnah Yomi Shir, he's included. Dalid Oved Gochav Meimazamnin Alav, a non-Jew, right? A full non-Jew. He can't be part of. Even if he converted, but he only did a bris milah. He didn't do a tevila and mazam love. You need both in order to do a complete ger. About ger gamra mazam love yachol levarach berkas hamazon. He's not only chayiv in zimun, he's also chayiv in berkas hamazon. Even though berkas hamazon it says, you say in the second bracha al ashin chalta lavosenu that you gave to our forefathers. His forefathers were not Jewish. Nonetheless, Hashem gave the land to Abraham. Avinu promised him, Bris Ben Absarim, land of Eretz Israel to Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu was Abraham Goyim, so he was included in his forefathers. Hey, Onein Bechol Shu Pater Melavarach. Let's say, unfortunately, someone just passed away and he's not yet buried. One of your Zion Krovim, you're an Onein. You're not chayiv. You're not allowed to make bracha. It's not only you're not allowed to make brachas. It's also to make brachas. And after you eat, you shouldn't make Berkas Hamazon. Also, he's not included in Berkas Hamazon because he's not a Bar Chiva and Mitzvah. Women and Avodim and Ktanim, you can't make a zimun for them. Aval Mizamnin La'atzman. Meaning, if you're two men and you have a woman eating with you, you can't join the woman to make three people for a zimun. Similarly, the Katan, similarly, an Eved. However, a group of three women could. You can't have one woman, one Eved, and one Katan. Because including Avadim are technically half Jewish, right? Right? When you, or David Eved Kanaini, right? A butler in your house. I don't know how practically this manifests itself nowadays. A butler in your house, He has a bris milah, he has a tefillah, but you were told him l'shem abdus, not l'shem ben chorin. If you want to make him ben chorin, you have to meshacher him. Maran Gittin talks about it. So you haven't yet freed him. He's a slave to you, a Jewish slave. So, meaning a Jewish concept of a slave. There's an Eved Ivri and Eved Kani, he's Eved Kani, a non-Jewish slave. So he is chayiv. Eved Kanani is chayiv in the mitzvos like a woman. The Gemara says lala. It's a lala. It's not just a song by Avi Yilson. It's lala. It's a gzera shava. It's a gzera shava. The Gemara says many places just whatever woman mitzvos a woman are chayiv in, and Eved Kanani is also chayiv in because Eved Kanani is similar to a woman because a woman is pater mitzvos she has mangra mitzvos that are time bound. And Eved Kanani also, his time is not his own. He has to service his master. A woman has to service her husband in certain respect. So their time is not their own. They're not chayiv mitzvah sheyes mangrama. Nonetheless, Birkas Hamazon is not a mitzvah sheyes mangrama because you could eat any time. So therefore, they're chayiv in benching, but you can't include avodim. You can't have two avodim and a woman because avodim are prutzim. They're they're low lives, I guess. And these are low lives. They're not going to have the proper concentration for zimun. Zimun I mentioned is to prepare you for Birkas Hamazon. Avodim's presence will detract from that. Elanashim la'atzman avodim la'atzman. If the avodim are mixed with the women, the avodim are men, right? Men with the women, they're low-life men. So they're going to joke around in flirtatious ways with a woman. So they can't be together. But you could have avodim by themselves and women by themselves. Uvashli zamnu b'shem. However, even avodim and Hashem, they shouldn't mention Hashem's name because avodim and Hashem, we mentioned that the whole idea of zimun is to prepare yourself for Birkas Hamazon, and women, it's hard for them to concentrate on Birkas Hamazon, and similarly avodim, there's always levity in avodim and women. Women are emotional, so it's hard for them to mechayev in zimun. Therefore, you can't say Hashem. You can do the regular zimun, but not invoke God's name. Zayin, nashim bezamnos la'atzman rishus. Right, that which we said that women could make a zimun 3 women together or 10 women together, doesn't make a difference. You can't say Hashem Hashem. That's only rishus. We'll explain in Ian Talina what rishus means. It doesn't mean it's an option. It's better than just an option. When they eat with men, right? Let's say you have 3 men eating, and you have, a common Shabbos table. You have numerous men there, enough to zimun by themselves, and you have women also. So the women are actually chayiv because they're with the men. They have to be present. They have to hear the zimun. Most women don't know this halacha, and they're not present when the men make the zimun. But technically, if they're eating with 3 men, they're chayiv in zimun. If they're bat mitzvah age, haga afal pi she'enan mevinos. Even if they don't understand, they're yotze with the men, and if they're not yotze with the men, so if there's 3 women that didn't hear zimun, they can do it by themselves. Rishus, chet androgynous, and actually they'd probably be chayiv to do that because since they ate with the men, they're chayiv. We'll talk about Ian Talin why they're chayiv in this instance, and when they're by themselves, it's called rishus. Ches androgynous mezamin lamino, vein mezamin Lola Anashim, Lola Anashim. If an androgynous, someone who has both genitals, if they're 3 androgynous together, so they can make a zimun, but he can't join together with a man or a woman, because an androgynous is not just a suffix whether he's a man or a woman, right? It's actually a min b'fnei atzma, bir b'fnei atzma, like Rabbi Lezer says in the Gemara. He's unique. He's a unique individual. He's bisexual, so he's a real bisexual. So. Not just that he has affinity for men and women, he's actually bisexual because primary sexual characteristics are that of a man and woman. Tet, tumtum enamazam and cloud. Tumtum has no genitals that are protruding, so he can't even part of his zimun with 2 other tumtum, because a tumtum is not a suffix. Like we said, an androgynous is not a suffix man or woman. He's both a man and a woman. A tumtum is neither a man or a woman, right? There's 4 categories. There's man, woman. There's bisexual, and there's someone who I guess is asexual. Tumtum would be asexual. Yud katan shegil onas ha'puutos. A katan that reached the age puutos. Puutos, it's like 7 years old. I think psychologists say when they're 7-year-old, they understand logic. You can make business deals with them. And he knows who he's blessing to. According to the Shulchan Aruch, he's reached a age that's generally the age of Katan Shagil Lechinach, and he could be added. If you have 2 men and 1 child, you can make a zimun, or 9 men and 1 child. It's good. God, the Ramah argues, he needs to be 13 years old. You don't have to check if he has 2 saros, even though technically you're only a gadol if you're 13 years old in one day and you have Sheisaras, we can assume, because most opinion holds Zima is the Rabbanan, we rely on Chazaka for the Rabbanan. And the Minhag is the Ramah says that you don't add a Kadash Gelachinach to your Zima. And similarly, even though we said before Nashim and Avadim, Mizamlas Atzman, you generally Katanim are not Mizamlas. We have 3 Katanim that are Gelachinach, they're not Mizamin for themselves. The Cheresh Rishota, in Mechavdim Mavinim, it's started from the Zima, Alf Bisha, Ein Cheresh Omeya Habracha. This is my real. Mishabura clarifies it's not talking about a regular Cheresh. It's talking about someone who's merely deaf, but he can speak. Because according to the Gemara, a full Cheresh is someone who's Eno Shomea, Eno Madaber. He can't hear and he can't speak. He's mute and deaf. Because if you're just deaf or just mute, then you're considered like a regular Jew. Veshota is also talking about someone who's not completely crazy. He's a little crazy. He's not as smart as the rest of the people. If he's a real Shota, if he's on medication, he's on medication, it's not chayiv in the mitzvahs. That's just the way it is, right? You can only do zimun as a mitzvah at the end of the day. And if you're not chayiv in the mitzvahs, like chera, shota, and a katan, no mitzvah. The mission do all avera imazam alav. If they based in a town, put him in excommunication because he did a bad avera. Usually, the avera we're talking about is the person sleeps around and committed adultery. That's generally why you put someone in excommunication. He's not allowed to participate in zimun, even though technically he's still chayiv in mitzvahs. Nonetheless, someone in Nidoy is not part of a group. And, the whole idea of Zimun is because there's levity. Someone's excommunication, you're not talking to at the table, so you can't join together for your Zimun. He's not part of the levity. That's the conclusion of today's share. Stay tuned for Ian to lean on, where we talk about the difference between a woman eating with men and a women eating by themselves. If they eat by themselves, they're chayiv in Zimun Rishus. If they're eating with men, they're chayiv Midoraisa or Midorabbana, whatever the chayiv of Zimun is, a complete chayiv. And therefore, they have to be present when the zimun happens of the men, and they have to have kavanah to be yotzei. You didn't know there's a real halacha. Most women are not so careful in this halacha. It's not promulgated enough, this halacha, but this is true. The Shulchan Aruch says this. Shabura agrees to it. We'll talk more about the idea behind this halacha, Ian to lean on, coming up next.